Welcome to the Wellness Revolution podcast, the radio show all about wellness in your mind, body, spirit, personal growth, sex, and relationships. Stay tuned for weekly interviews featuring guests that have achieved physical, mental, and spiritual health in their lives. If you'd like to have access to our entire back catalog, visit drveronica.com for instant access. And here is your host, Dr. Veronica.
Thanks again for joining in for another episode of Dr. Veronica's Wellness Revolution. We're going to talk today. I want to jump right into this. I want to have enough time to be able to talk to this gentleman who is a guru. And the gentleman I have with me today is Dr. Thomas O'Brien. He is originally a doctor of chiropractic medicine, but you know what I've found? I feel really silly sometimes because I feel like I went to school before medical school with the chiropractors and I was getting really good grades and they weren't doing as well. And I felt like all these people who aren't so smart are going into chiropractic. Then I realized on the back half of my career that I was the dumb one and they're the smart one and I better learn from them. So those of us who are the smart doctors, the conventional smart doctors, have now kind of thrown away a lot of what we learned. We know about the body and all that, and jumped in the pool with our colleagues, because we're all colleagues out to help people get well, who are the chiropractors, the naturopath, the nutritionists, and we all collectively are out there getting the word out on how you can heal your own body. And so Dr. Thomas O'Brien has a new book out there, The Autoimmune Fix. I see so many people every day who say, I've been told I have autoimmune disease, and they haven't quite given it a name, but I have autoimmune disease. So the Autoimmune Fix talks about this, but also talks about what's been going on in the healthcare system, what's been going on or not going on when you go to your doctor. And here's the latest and greatest. And we also have a surprise coming up on some information that you can get where you can go and hear the world experts in autoimmune disease. So Dr. Thomas O'Brien, welcome to Dr. Veronica's Wellness Revolution.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
So first, define for us what is meant by autoimmune disease. Because as I told you, and I said in the intro, I get a lot of people who said, I've been told I have autoimmunes. The big diagnosis these days is, I have Hashimoto's. Every other person has Hashimoto's. Oh, you have an autoimmune disease too. Autoimmune disease, give us a definition.
Sure. Your immune system is the armed forces in your body. It's the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, the Navy. It's there to protect you. Mm-hmm. And it's all we have to protect us, you know. And you have exactly the same immune system that your ancestors had thousands of years ago. We haven't genetically changed. So what was it that our immune system was designed to fight? Parasites, bugs, viruses, molds, and fungus. That's it. Parasites, bugs, viruses, molds, and fungus. There was no polysorbate 80 or red dye number 3 or bisphenol A or mercury in the fish. There wasn't any of the toxins that we're exposed to every day. So our immune system is the same as our ancestors. So our immune system is built to protect us from parasites, bugs, viruses, molds, and fungus. There's no way for it to adapt. So when you get exposed to bisphenol A, for example, which is the chemical that softens plastic like water bottles or pop bottles or soft contact lenses or credit card receipts have bisphenol A. There is just millions and millions of pounds of this stuff being dumped every year here. But when you're exposed to bisphenol A, this chemical gets into your body and it binds onto your cells. It grabs onto proteins inside your body, like an estrogen cell or a testicular cell. Now the immune system that's there to protect you from bugs, parasites, viruses, molds, and fungus has to attack this thing, this molecule that got in there that's not supposed to be. This is an invader. What is this thing? So your immune system attacks this thing, this bisphenol A molecule or this lead molecule, if you have lead poisoning, or mercury molecule, and you create this inflammation as the immune system is trying to destroy this invader. And the inflammation has collateral damage, which damages your own cell that the bisphenol A grabbed onto. And now your immune system has just damaged your cell. So when the immune system attacks yourself, it's called an autoimmune mechanism. It's the immune system attacking self. Now, in the example I just gave you, we make antibodies every day to ourself. There's a normal reference range for thyroid antibodies and brain antibodies. There's a normal range. Why? Because your immune system is the garbage collector. It's got to get rid of the old and damaged cells, the ones that are breaking down, they're just worn out, to make room for new cells to be built. That you have a whole new body every 7 years. We regenerate every cell in our body. But to make room for cells to regenerate, you got to get rid of the old and damaged ones. So there's a normal level of thyroid antibodies. It's normal. But when you have a chemical binding onto the thyroid, for this example now, binding onto the thyroid, the chemical might be chlorine, or it could be bisphenol A, binding onto a thyroid cell, and your immune system says, what is this stuff? That's not good for me. I better attack it. And your immune system attacks that cell, causes the inflammation that damages the thyroid that the bisphenol A is grabbed onto. Now the antibodies that your body makes to get rid of old thyroid cells has to make some more antibodies to get rid of the damaged thyroid bisphenol A cell. Because this thyroid cell has been damaged, you got to get rid of it. So you make some extra antibodies to your thyroid. That's not a problem. But you're exposed to bisphenol A every day. 100% of the infants born today have bisphenol A in their urine. 100% of them. Because mom has it. Mom's toxic with this stuff, right? So it binds onto your cells, and so every day you're exposed to this stuff, and then your body has to make more antibodies to your thyroid to get rid of the damaged thyroid cell that the bisphenol A was grabbing onto, and you make more thyroid cells and more thyroid cells, and if you did a blood test, you'd see you had high thyroid antibody levels, and you make more thyroid cells, more thyroid antibodies, until one day, this thyroid antibody production becomes self-perpetuating. It's got a life of its own. Now you develop the autoimmune disease. So you were on the autoimmune spectrum with elevated antibodies, but now it moves into an autoimmune disease because you've killed off enough thyroid cells because of the elevated antibodies. The thyroid can't function very well anymore. That's the autoimmune disease. And Mrs. Patient, you pull at a chain, the chain always breaks at the weakest link. It's at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys, wherever your genetic weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break when you pull too hard. Inflammation is the pull on the chain. So that's why we hear about anti-inflammatory lifestyles, is that you want to live as much of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle with all that that means, and your show talks about that a lot, about anti-inflammatory lifestyles, so that you don't have the link in the chain break and get an autoimmune disease. Well, what's pulling on the chain? What's pulling on the chain is the gasoline or the kerosene that you're getting in your body, if it's air pollution or if it's foods you're eating that aren't good for you. So the question is it a kidney cell or a brain cell? Is it gasoline or kerosene? When you want to start fixing these problems, you have to ask the questions, where is my immune system attacking right now? And why is my immune system attacking there? That's the way you uncover what the mechanism is that's causing the diseases that we have.
So talk a little bit about thyroid, because I think all of us that are in the functional medicine wellness arena, the thyroid people come in because they just seem like, for whatever reason, they're the most miserable. There's other miserable people, I'm not saying, but the thyroid people seem to be miserable and go seek the help. Why thyroid, and why mostly women? Although we're seeing a lot of men now prop up with it. Yeah,
but the ratio is 9-to-1, women to men. With Hashimoto's, it's 9-to-1. It's much more prevalent in women. There's a number of reasons for that. The first reason is receptor sites are catcher's mitts. The pitcher throws the ball to the catcher. You have receptor sites on the outside of your cells facing the bloodstream. So as the blood's going by, it goes past these receptor sites. Hormones get inside the cell to do whatever they're supposed to do by going through the receptor site. So estrogen in your bloodstream only goes into an estrogen receptor site. It won't go into a thyroid receptor site. And it goes into the estrogen receptor site. It opens the door and the estrogen goes inside the cell and the body will do what it's going to do. Insulin won't go into an estrogen receptor site. It won't go into a thyroid receptor site. It only goes into an insulin receptor site. All of the hormones have specific receptor sites. There are chemicals that we're exposed to now every day, never before in the history of humanity, but now every day. And there are 3 chemicals known to compete on thyroid receptor sites. Now, back up for a minute. There's only 2 substances for which there are receptor sites on every cell of your body, every cell. It's no, not testosterone, no, not estrogen, no, not insulin. The only substances for which there are receptor sites on every cell of your body are vitamin D. That's why vitamin D is so important for us, because every cell needs it. And thyroid hormone, because your thyroid hormone is the thermostat on the wall in your house. So at night, you turn the thermostat down, so the furnace goes down, so it's colder in the house, so that you sleep and you save fuel. In the morning, it automatically turns back on before you get up, and so it warms up the house, but you've saved fuel during the night. So thyroid hormone controls the thermostat. That's called your metabolism, and how hot your cells burn, how many calories you burn. That's your thyroid hormone. Every cell needs control as to how hot it should burn. That's what thyroid hormone does. So thyroid hormone's in the bloodstream, and it goes past the thyroid receptor site and it goes right into it. Opens the door, and the thyroid hormone goes into the cell. Now, as you know, many people will feel like they've got thyroid symptoms. They come in, and the doctor does a blood test and sees that their thyroid hormone levels are normal, but they've got thyroid symptoms. So they write a prescription for thyroid hormone. And we're shotgunning thyroid hormone into someone that has normal levels because it's going to help them feel a little better. Well, how is it possible that their thyroid hormone levels are normal, but a blood test that many doctors do is called TSH, and it's a measure in the brain telling the thyroid how much hormone to make. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So how come the TSH can be a little high, but the thyroid hormone levels are normal? And you see that all the time in practice. I mean, we all see that. How does that happen? It's because the thyroid hormone is not getting into the cell. It's in the bloodstream. Your bloodstream is just a highway. There's lots of traffic on the highway. So you do a blood test and you're looking for, are there Chevrolets on the highway? Is there thyroid hormone on the highway, right? So there's enough hormone, but it's not getting into the cell. So the brain says, I need more thyroid hormone in these cells. So the TSH goes up to say, make more hormone, but you got plenty of hormone. And doctors shotgun with synthetic hormone and people will feel a little bit better. It doesn't fix them, but they feel a little better. Well, how come the thyroid hormone is not getting into the cell? How come? Because there are 3 chemicals that compete and will go into thyroid hormone receptor sites. But when they go into thyroid hormone receptor sites, they don't open the door. They just sit there. So the pitcher throws a fastball to the catcher, but the catcher's got 3 baseballs in the mitt, and so the fastball just bounces out. The thyroid hormone just keeps going down the bloodstream. It can't get in. So what are the chemicals that compete in thyroid receptor sites? The most common one, Mrs. Patient, you're in an elevator in a hotel. The elevator doors open. Can you tell right away the swimming pool's on that floor? Oh, yeah. They smell it, right? But everybody else in the elevator can't smell it, but they smell it. Why do they smell it? Because they have a chlorine sensitivity. Their detox capabilities are not breaking down the chlorine, so the chlorine is sitting in the receptor sites of the thyroid hormone. So the thyroid hormone is going by, it can't get into the cell, and the thyroid hormone keeps going by, And yet the brain says, I need more hormone, I need more hormone, and it's chlorine. It's a very common competitor for thyroid receptor sites. So those women, especially the women, cold hands and feet, sometimes they wear socks to bed, or your husband says you got really cold feet, can't get up in the morning, wish you had 20 more minutes in bed, can't lose that last 5 pounds even if you don't eat for a couple of days, bowels are sluggish, emotions are kind of sluggish, brain sluggish, kind of feel a little depressed, all signs of a sluggish thyroid, all signs, but your thyroid hormone levels are normal, but your doctor gives you thyroid hormone anyway, because we know it's going to help a little bit, and they haven't had the chance to read about this competitive inhibition of chlorine into the thyroid receptor sites. So that's a very common mechanism for thyroid dysfunction. Now, how does that relate in terms of autoimmunity?
Let me just interrupt. Let me just interrupt because you said there are 3 things and you mentioned the chlorine, but tell people the other 3, the other 2 that go along with chlorine, just because people are going to start connecting the dots and say, that could be me.
You won't like this. You won't like this. Fluoride is very, very common. Fluoride's a very common thyroid inhibitor substance. It's in your toothpaste, it's in your mouthwash, it's in your drinking water. And it competes on thyroid receptor sites. And the result is your thyroid hormone doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. You gain weight, you feel sluggish. Sometimes you can pack on an extra 20, 30 pounds over 5 years, that it just creeps up little by little by little. And so fluoride is the second one. The third one is bromide. So it's chlorine, fluoride, and bromide. Bromide is in baked goods. A lot of bromides used in baked goods. So those are the 3 substances, chemicals that will compete on thyroid receptor sites. And they don't break down, they just stay there.
Okay, so that's chemicals. Now, I know you're an expert on another food that everybody loves, and when you tell them they have to give it up, they want to murder you practically because they're addicted. Talk about that food you know I'm talking about.
Well, unfortunately, it's the most common food in America today. It's 132.5 pounds per person per year that we're eating.
Wow.
132.5 pounds. And that's wheat. That you have toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner, croutons on your salad, a cookie or a muffin. And it goes on day after week, after month, after year, after year, after year. Harvard published another study last year. Hollon, Hollon, and his team published a study, and they showed that every single human, when they eat wheat, gets intestinal permeability. The slang term is leaky gut. And that's the gateway into the development of autoimmune diseases that we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's the gateway. And every single person, every time they eat wheat, not just once in a while, every time. And their language was all humans develop intestinal permeability. So anyone that's watching this interview, if you're a human, and I think most of you are, that means every time you eat wheat, you get tears in your lining of your gut. It's called pathogenic intestinal permeability. Even for those that don't feel bad, those that feel bad when they eat wheat, they're the blessed ones, because you can't argue with them. They know when they eat it, they get sick. But the ones where the weak link in the chain is their brain, they don't associate the pasta they had last night with the brain fog they've got today. They just don't associate it. Or with seizures. In the Journal of Gastroenterology, children with drug-resistant seizures.
Wow.
That means that they've been to at least 2 specialists, and they've tried at least 3 drugs before they can get the classification of drug-resistant seizures. 50% of those children go into complete remission on a wheat-free diet. 50% of them. Why don't our neurologists know this? Because it's in the Gastroenterology Journal, and neurologists don't read gastroenterology journals, they read neurology journals. So they just don't know this. So wheat can affect any tissue of your body. I'm going to give you an example of how it affects the thyroid. When you eat wheat, Mrs. Patient, proteins are like a pearl necklace. Hydrochloric acid made in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. Our digestive enzymes are supposed to act like scissors to break the pearl necklace into smaller clumps of pearls, and then smaller clumps and smaller clumps and smaller clumps until they get broken down into each pearl of the pearl necklace. That's called an amino acid. And the amino acids go right through the walls of the intestines, and then your body uses those as building blocks to make new muscle or new bone or new nerve hormones called neurotransmitters that they use. Your body uses the amino acids. Your intestines are 20 to 25 feet long. It starts at the mouth and goes to the other end. It's one long tube, kind of winds around in your abdomen, twists around quite a bit, but it's one long tube. If you could take a donut and stretch a donut straight down and look down the donut, it's one tube. So when you swallow food, it's not in your body yet, it's still in the tube. It's got to go through the walls to get into the bloodstream and go everywhere else in your body, right? But there's a cheesecloth that lines the intestines so that only these single pearls of the pearl necklace can fit through the cheesecloth to get into the bloodstream. Only the single pearls, the amino acids. The problem with wheat is that no human can break down the pearl necklace into each pearl of the pearl necklace. The best we can do is break it into clumps of pearls. There's a 33 pearl clump, a 17 pearl clump, an 11 pearl clump. And these clumps of pearls are gasoline on the fire in the intestines. They cause inflammation. And it's the inflammation that tears the cheesecloth. When you tear the cheesecloth, now larger clumps of the pearl necklace of any food can go through the permeability into the bloodstream before there's been enough time for the digestive enzymes to break down that food going down the tract until it's small enough to get through, right? Does that make sense? So
yep.
You've got these clumps of pearls going through into the bloodstream. They're called macromolecules, big molecules. And your immune system says, whoa, what's this? This is not good for me. I better fight this. So if you had prime rib for dinner and you chew it 3 or 4 times instead of the 15 to 20 that you should, so you chew a couple times and swallow it down, we shovel more than we chew, and you shovel it down, you've got this clump of stringy meat that's kind of hard to break down, and your pearls of the enzymes are trying to cut off each pearl of the pearl necklace, but it takes a while. That's why you got 20 feet of intestines for the scissors to work on that. So it's going down, and in the first part of the intestines now, but there's tears in the cheesecloth, so this clump of prime rib, these macromolecules of prime rib, get into the bloodstream. Your immune system says, whoa, I better fight this. Now you make antibodies to beef, and you're allergic to beef, or to bananas, or to chicken, or to potatoes, or to cantaloupe. And this is the doctor that does a 90 food panel to see what foods a person is sensitive to, and it comes back with 20 or 25 foods, and the patient says, oh my God, that's everything I eat. Well, of course it is, because your body's trying to protect you. You don't shut down the immune system. You stop the tears in the cheesecloth. So you have to find out, why is the cheesecloth tearing? And when you find out why the cheesecloth is tearing, then 6 months to a year later, you check again the 90 foods. Now you're sensitive to 2 or 3 and not 20. Now, that's the mechanism in the development of intestinal permeability, the leaky gut. Let's tie that now to the thyroid. How does this trigger an autoimmune thyroid disease? So when this macromolecule of beef gets into the bloodstream and your immune system says, whoa, what's this? The brain says, you, General, you now are General Beef. Take care of this. General Beef builds an assembly line. The assembly line starts producing soldiers. They're called antibodies. The soldiers are trained to go after beef. That's all they do. They go after beef. So they're in the bloodstream looking for beef. And when they see beef clumps, they fire their chemical bullets to destroy the beef clumps. Remember, your bloodstream's just a highway. There's no lanes of traffic. Everything's bouncing around in there. It's going in the same direction, but it's bouncing around. Think of the antibodies like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he's got his head out of the big Humvee. He's got those dark glasses on. He's got a big submachine gun over there, over there. And he's firing these chemical bullets at beef because he's been trained to go after beef. Now, so the chemical, the beef macromolecule may be 15 amino acids long because it hadn't had enough time to be broken down into each pearl of the pearl necklace. So there's 15 pearls, there's 15 amino acids there. And Arnold has been trained to go after anything that looks like that 15 amino acids. So I'm going to say A, B, C, D. And, but it really is 15 letters long in this example. And let's say Arnold is going after wheat because wheat got in, tears a cheesecloth, it gets in as a macromolecule, your immune system makes antibodies to wheat. I said beef to start with, but I'm going to talk about wheat now. And so let's say AABCD. Arnold's looking for AABCD, bouncing around in the bloodstream, looking for AABCD. He's got these dark glasses on. Now the surface of your thyroid facing the bloodstream is made up of proteins and fats. That's what the surface is made of facing the bloodstream. Now, proteins are made up of amino acids. There are hundreds of amino acids long, the surface of the proteins of the thyroid. Hundreds of amino acids long. But part of the thyroid includes AABCD. So Arnold, that's looking for wheat, AABCD, over there, over there. He said, oh look, over there. And he fires these chemical bullets at the thyroid to damage the thyroid cell because it's got AABCD. That's called molecular mimicry. Okay? And this is a big problem for people today. They just don't know it, but it's a big, big problem as to why autoimmune disease is so prevalent. So Arnold starts firing his chemical bullet at the thyroid, damaging the thyroid cell. Remember, you have a normal amount of thyroid cells, but now you have to make a few extra because there's more damaged thyroid cells than normal. That's after having toast for breakfast. But now you have a sandwich for lunch, more Arnold. More damage to the thyroid, AABCD, if that's the weak link in your chain. If it's your brain, Arnold goes after your brain with molecular mimicry. If it's your kidneys, Arnold goes after your kidneys with molecular mimicry. It just depends on what the weak link is in your chain. It doesn't matter. With wheat, it doesn't matter because AABCD is very common to the structure of the human body. It's a component of, if you think of proteins like a brick wall, there's like, it's a big long brick wall, many colors of bricks in there, but there's this pattern. Anytime you see that pattern, oh look, it's there. Oh look, it's over there. Oh, it's there too. And that's AABCD in our bodies. It's very common in our bodies. So wherever the weak link is in your chain, that's where Arnold's going to go. And then you have to make more antibodies to your thyroid because that, until this antibody production to your thyroid becomes self-perpetuating. Now you're on the autoimmune spectrum, killing off your thyroid in this example, or your brain, killing off cells, killing off cells, killing off cells, until eventually you've killed off so many cells, now you're starting to get cold hands and feet. Or it's hard to wake up in the morning. Now your thyroid's not working so well for you. And you go to a doctor and they check your thyroid hormone. The hormone levels are normal. They're normal. But you're not functioning very well. And they don't check to look for the autoimmunity that's causing all the inflammation in your thyroid and killing off the cells in your thyroid. That's the autoimmune spectrum.
Okay, so now I want to, first of all, I love your analogies. They're just so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's just like, I'm into this story and it's just like, okay, when you've heard the story before and explained in sort of, the medical health and all the lingo with all the stuff behind it. It's like, yeah, ho hum, I've heard about that before. But with the Arnold Schwarzenegger behind it, in the classes, it's like, yes. So thank you so much for that. So I want to jump over because, that was a beautiful definition, explanation, but over to the fix about it, because we're getting on in the interview and I want to talk about, now you're talking about the autoimmune fix. And we talked a little bit before we came on about type 1 diabetes at which people think, oh, you just got it, there's nothing you can do about it. And also Alzheimer's, you just get old, you just get it, there's nothing you can do. You got the tangles in your brain, you're gonna get it. So talk a bit about can we fix this? Because most people think, I just got it. I'm a victim, I just got it, there's nothing I can do about it, I got the pill, I keep going to the doctor, it gets adjusted, I feel miserable, this is just my lot in life. My family had it, my mom was like this, too bad. Oh well. But that's not true.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all. I was just looking for something. I can't find it quickly, so I'll just skip that. No one gets Alzheimer's in their 60s or 70s. No one. It's a decades-long process, slowly killing off brain cells until you've killed off enough brain cells that the system doesn't work very well anymore, just like your thyroid. Dr. Dale Bredesen is at UCLA. He runs the Buck Institute at UCLA. That's the Alzheimer's Research Center. He published a paper in November of 2014 showing complete reversal of Alzheimer's in 9 out of 10 people within 5 years at UCLA. They reversed it within 5 years. How did he do it? There's a 34-point checklist. Do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? Top of the list, wheat sensitivity. Next, dairy sensitivity. Because AABCD is so very common with the brain when you have a sensitivity to wheat. When I give my lectures to doctors, there's 200 doctors in the room. How many know or suspect you have a sensitivity to wheat? Let me see a show of hands. Right, and I say, hold your hands high for a minute, please. And they do, and I say, look around the room, and it's about 80% of the room. And then I'll say, how many of you know or suspect if you have an inadvertent exposure to wheat, it seems to affect your brain? Let me see your hands again. Come on, hold them up, hold them up. And about 50, 60% of those people raise their hand again. And I say, look around the room. Now, this is a talk to doctors, healthcare practitioners. This is not a celiac group. This is your practice, doctors. This is how often it's in your practice. How many of you are finding it this often? And maybe there'll be one person that raises their hand. In other words, in clinical practice, 6 to 7 out of 10 people will test positive if you do the right test, looking for a sensitivity to wheat. 6 to 7 out of 10. And of that number, the most common system effective for molecular mimicry, AABCD, is the brain. Most common for most people, it affects the brain. So you've got Arnold firing at your brain, causing inflammation in the brain, that's pulling on the chain, and eventually one day you say, oh, I'm getting old, I don't remember the way I used to, ha. So really, how old are you? Well, I'm 38. No, that's not supposed to happen. No, that's not normal. You're getting older. No, it's a brain that's on fire. You got inflammation in your brain. Why? I don't know why. Let's find out. But you're on the autoimmune spectrum. And that's what this book is about. The Autoimmune Fix just came out 2 weeks ago. Yes. That's what it's about, is to understand this big picture concept. Look, everybody wants a cure. May I be gentle and say this to your listeners? Wake up. Wake up. There's no such thing as a cure. There's no magic pill that fixes your diabetes. Wake up. A cure means you don't have the symptoms anymore. You have no markers of the symptoms like blood test or urine test, and you can do whatever you want. Now, remission means you don't have the symptoms anymore. There's no markers of the symptoms, urine or blood test, and as long as you live the lifestyle that got you feeling better, you're going to stay healthy. There's no cure. You want to read about a cure for diabetes? Go to YouTube and type in type 2 diabetes and raw food diets. And you'll see the videos of African-American postmenopausal women, which is a high-risk group for diabetes, very high-risk group. You'll see a video of them, and they go on a raw food diet for 30 days, and you see the doctors talk about their blood tests. Say, this is unbelievable. Their diabetes is gone. It's completely gone. Their cholesterol's come down 85 points. I'm taking them off their cholesterol medication. You see the doctor saying this. The most potent thing you can do for your health is what's on the end of your fork.
Yes.
That's it. You know, it's like, wake up, people, wake up. And the reason I'm so direct about this is because for the first time in the history of the human species, for the very first time, the New England Journal of Medicine tells us today that children born today are going to get sick at an earlier age than their parents. They're going to get diagnosed with diseases at an earlier age than their parents, and they're going to die at an earlier age than when their parents die. For the first time in the history of the human species. This has never happened before. We're going down. Now the statistics are very clear. Our healthcare system is one of the worst. The US is ranked second from the bottom in quality of healthcare by the World Health Organization. Yet we spend more for health than anywhere else on the planet. It's in pharma's big interest to keep us dumbed down and not understanding any of this. That's why that's why I've spent a year with betrayal, the autoimmune disease solution they're not telling you. When you guys wake up to this common sense stuff that's in here and that's in betrayal, you're just going to start asking different questions. And when you ask different questions, your doctors are being demanded upon to get more answers. Because the things that I write about in this book just make common sense. It makes sense. Stop throwing gasoline on the fire. Everybody knows that diseases are inflammatory. All right, stop throwing gasoline on the fire. Well, how do I do that? Well, you have to learn. And so it's going to take a while to learn. There's no cure that you take this pill and you're fine. There's no cure. There is remission. And you can have a wonderfully vibrant, dynamic life. You can. But we have to learn how to ask the right kind of questions.
So betrayal, you mentioned betrayal. I think so many people feel betrayed by the healthcare system, betrayed by their doctors, betrayed by the government, society, just betrayed by everything.
Yes.
So tell us about betrayal, and we're going to talk about how people can get access to betrayal and learn.
Yeah, I've traveled the world, literally. For the last year, I put 165, I think it is, 165,000 miles on air miles now in this last year. Lisbon, Barcelona, Leipzig, Germany, London, 3 times in London, Dublin, Sao Paulo, all over the world, interviewing world experts, the godfathers and godmothers of autoimmunity. And they know all this, they know it, and it's shocking when you hear them talk about it. They've been known about this for years, these kinds of concepts, but no one's carrying the message out, putting it together, So we've put it all together, and it's a 7-part series online. It's all free. Everything's free. It's about an hour a day for 7 days, and you can register for it here with your website. So people can click on it and register, and they can watch Betrayal, and they're going to hear from the experts. You're going to hear from Dr. Marta Vita-Pease in Barcelona, Spain, who is reversing type 1 diabetes with diet and nutrition, regenerating beta cells of the pancreas, so your body starts making insulin again. What we've been told is impossible. No, it's not. Read her papers. Here's the evidence. It works. And it's simple. It's not a drug. And it works. You're going to read Professor Yehuda Schonfeld, the godfather of predictive autoimmunity. His book is there on the shelf, Vaccines and Autoimmunity. It just came out. And what he talks about, he says, Dr. O'Brien. Now, John Schonfeld, to get a sense of who this guy is, 28 of the PhD students who got their PhDs under him, many more than that, but 28 of them chair departments of immunology in med schools and hospitals around the world.
Wow.
They're his students. This is the godfather. I interviewed him 3 times. And you hear him say, Dr. O'Brien, I am very much in favor of vaccinations. They have saved millions of lives. However, if the person carries the gene HLA-DRB1, and 30% of the population does, they are very sensitive to having an acute reaction to the adjuvants in vaccine. Thus, it is of wisdom to perhaps be cautious in administering the vaccines, perhaps a slower time scale of administration, not 7 in one day, not 3 in one day to these infants that have a weakened, not developed immune system yet. So you give one and you wait 2 weeks, you give another one. So Schoenfeld's all for vaccinations, but he's saying, for these patients that are HLA-DRB1, you got to wake up. You can't throw this toxic poison in them because their bodies can't handle it that well. Other bodies may be able to handle it okay. So he's not saying don't vaccinate. He's just saying vaccinate with caution if they have that weak link in their chain. That's the kind of stuff you're going to hear from these experts. It's just such useful information. And it saves lives. It's going to save thousands and thousands of lives. So I want everyone to watch this. It's free. It's all free. Because if you watch it, you're going to ask different questions of your doctor. Questions of your doctor.
I just got to share, because we're just meeting for the first time a little bit before the podcast, of how I personally felt portrayed by my medical education. I also felt portrayed in my healthcare. I realized that I was sensitive to certain things because my sons, one got depressed and one got bipolar, and we figured out that they were sensitive to wheat and soy. One had thyroid symptoms major, and then
AABCD.
The doctor came to me, who was my friend, another Dr. Veronica, who's a chiropractor, said, "Come here, Mom, let me test you." And then, what do you belong? I'm sensitive. Now, I'm not eating tons of these foods, so I would get sick sometime and say, "What's going on? What happened? I don't even know what happened." And all of a sudden, it answered questions for me. And the other thing I will say is, as an African American, I used to feel, that's a white people disease. And I realized it's not a white people disease. Yeah. And probably everybody in my family is suffering from these things. And oh my God, we better wake up. My mother has diabetes. My father has diabetes. I'm an eye surgeon by training. My grandmother went blind from diabetes. This betrayal that you're talking about needs to get out there to the whole world. So when people go to my Facebook page, to my website, even if it's after the date, don't think that you still can't have access to it, because the world needs to see this. So Dr. Thomas O'Brien, I thank you for your work, your book, The Autoimmune Fix. For those of you who like to read, go get the book. You need it on your shelf so you can pick it up and read it over and over again, because it takes a while to digest this.
May I say something about the book?
Yes.
Listen, here's the thing on the book. Right now it's on Amazon for $16. Amazon's selling it at a loss because it's getting more traffic. More people are coming, and then when you're on Amazon, you're likely to buy something else. So that's their philosophy. Yes. But it's $16. If I make the New York Times bestseller list, that means I get invitations. I'm now a candidate for Ellen, Oz, Bill Maher, all these shows where I can carry this message out even further. Yes. So for $16, I promise if you're not happy, I'll give you a refund. You just send me a note and I'll give you a refund. I'm very proud of it. It's 30 years of work. But help me carry this message out. Help me, if you would, by getting the book. And this is not some line. There's no profit in this. You make a couple bucks a book. This is not for that. This is really to carry the message out, to wake the world up, because our kids are dying younger than their parents. And that's what this is about. So help me and watch Betrayal. Tell your friends about Betrayal. Help us carry the message out there so we can reach 1 million people with this.
Yay. And I'm going to help you reach those 1 million people with the followers of Dr. Veronica and all my posting on social media. So Dr. O'Brien, again, with much gratitude for your work and your time, those 165,000 miles to get Betrayal put together so we all could figure out what we need to do to heal ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more on how to bring wellness into your life, visit drveronica.com. See you all next week. Take care.